10 years into the new millennium, and we've been haunted by the ghosts of the past. That same sentiment carries onward. The ghosts never leave, but this decade in Gothic horror focuses on something else entirely: the curses we place on ourselves and others. One thing's for certain: if the dead weren't punishing us enough, we did it to ourselves. In today's video, we'll look at the films that best fit the genre of Gothic horror in this decade. So now it's time for the 2010s to show us their best Gothic horror films. We start off our list with 2010's The Wolfman. Yeah, it's a strange placement, but hear me out before you take a bite out of me first. Lawrence Talbot returns to his estranged home after his brother goes missing. Joined by the latter's fiancée, Lawrence finds out that a terrible monster plaguing the village and the woods could be tied to his family's legacy. Defeat the beast, and all is well. But which one is the beast? So yes, we're starting our list off with a box office flop that was supposedly the start of the Universal Studios Dark Universe. Then came Dracula Untold, The Mummy, and it all crashed down. Either way, I still find this to be a good slice of Gothic horror for a central viewing. This remake of the 1941 classic follows its own path, with Lawrence Talbot being this wounded man who left home and doesn't feel happy returning. Everything told to him is a lie to some degree, and we get a male lead who is constantly gaslit by his father the entirety of the film. Outside of the story, I think this is one of the last films that knew how to use CGI. Instead of making the entire film one CGI mess, the studio hired legendary artist Rick Baker and his team at Cinovation Studios. Rick Baker may sound familiar to us horror fans, but for those not in the know, Rick Baker made his name by working on such films as The Incredible Melting Man, An American Werewolf in London, The Howling, and more as a special effects makeup artist and creator. Essentially, he brought to life the monster from page to screen. The Wolfman blended the artistry of Rick Baker with the moving picture company and double negative coming in for the VFX. The Wolfman may not be that moody, slow-paced horror that we're so used to seeing on the series, but it does well to get others interested in this subgenre. Think of this almost as entry level into understanding Gothic horror for the modern day. Two remakes back to back. Well, let's see what Harry Potter can do when confronting one of the most frightening images in British horror. Did I also forget this was a Hammer production? Recently widowed Arthur Kipps is sent to a remote village to get a deceased client's affairs all in order. While given a simple task, Arthur stumbles upon a terrible secret, and the estate he's managing is haunted by the infamous Woman in Black. So why is this essential? This was Hammer Film's big comeback. Yes, that Hammer film that you guys have questioned time and time again why they have never made my list before in this series. Well, here we are. In all seriousness, The Woman in Black doesn't quite hit the notes of the 1989 original. Much of the mystery is given away pretty early in the film, so that we get more of those eerie moments leading up to the jump scares. Daniel Radcliffe's performance as Arthur Kipps is the reason you should tune in for this entry. Much like our last film, Arthur represses his emotions for his deceased wife and the uncertainty of his child through his work. While starting out as a skeptic of this haunted village and the Woman in Black herself, Arthur wraps himself into a mystery that tries to stay buried. He's still a rescuer archetype, like in the original, just a little bit more sadder in this adaptation. The film's ending with Arthur and his son being reunited with the dead mother strangely gives a melancholic feeling after they were wiped out by an incoming train. They are freed from the Woman in Black and can move on into the afterlife. Very doom and gloom on the outside, but we love doom and gloom in our Gothic horror, if you haven't noticed. In the last 2 decades of Gothic horror cinema, Del Toro has found his way on our list. And why not? The man punches out a Gothic horror tale at least once a decade. After marrying the charming and seductive Sir Thomas Sharp, author Edith Cushing soon finds her new home is not the happily ever after she was promised. Haunted by spirits and under constant surveillance by her sister-in-law, Edith finds that the English hills of Crimson Peak run red for sinister reasons. So this entry on our list kind of goes against the subgenre of Gothic horror. While yes, on the surface it looks like a Gothic horror film with its visuals for the spirits and Lucille's murderous rage, this film was marketed poorly to us. It's not a Gothic horror film. If anything, it's a Gothic romance. At the core of Crimson Peak is a woman repressed by society and forced to conform to societal norms for the sake of being a woman in this time period. It's what was expected of her. Edith ends up finding love in Thomas and is married off after the mysterious murder of her father. Edith is happy and taken away from the Americas to live in England. But here is where things get interesting. While having somewhat submitted to society's norms, Edith's rebellion really starts here. Her fight isn't just against Thomas, but Lucille, a sort of Black Widow character. Edith discovers that these spirits that have been haunting her relentlessly aren't there to terrorize her, but to warn her that being around the Sharp family comes with consequences. That's where I think most folks thought that this was a horror film, let alone Gothic horror. Crimson Peak to me comes off as more of a homage to other Gothic films like Dragonwyck and Rebecca. These films aren't really horror films or even Gothic horror, but they share similar elements of that subgenre that sometimes confuses the viewer. I used to think Crimson Peak was just your run-of-the-mill supernatural horror, until I really sat with it and saw the story for what it really was. Robert Eggers finally makes it onto our list, so let's jump right into it. In the story of suspicion and paranoia, a 1630 New England family are exiled from their community and forced to live on their own. After the disappearance of the family's newborn, the eldest daughter, Thomasin, is blamed for witchcraft. Robert Eggers has always found some way to include some areas of the Gothic narrative in his films. While most may look at The Witch as folk horror, this is a decade where genre mashups kept everything fresh. So why is The Witch a central viewing for Gothic horror, you may ask? Well, what story is better to talk about repression and religion other than this entry? The Puritan family doesn't come off like religious nutjobs just yet, but in how their eldest daughter, Thomasin, is treated. You can see her wild free spirit is chained to her duties as a woman. As the film progresses and the family is torn apart, they all turn on Thomasin, blaming the eldest daughter for moments out of her hands. The story overall shows what one little lie can do to label you an outcast, even within your own family. We see this played out in stories like The Scarlet Letter, The Crucible, and Eyes of Fire, the latter actually being a folk horror. These films I've listed are definitely blurring together, and I fear I'm repeating myself. But overall, we've seen that this decade focuses on the religiously and society repressed individuals who try to maneuver through life with these restraints. Thomasin isn't far off from Edith Cushing or even Lawrence Talbot and Arthur Kipps. They've all been warning calls about what happens when we allow religion and society to hold tight reins over ourselves, the individual. Before we get to our final film, here are the runner-ups on our list.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Was machen Sie hier? Sie haben ja nicht...
We conclude this list with an Irish Gothic horror entry that deserves recognition. A family curse confines orphan twins to their home. in punishment for their ancestors' sins. Bound to the rules of a haunting childhood lullaby, the twins must never let any outsiders inside their home. Why is this film essential viewing? The Lodgers covers most bases on what we've already covered in this video so far. Cinematography, color, camera work, editing. It all gets you in the mood for a slow burn gothic horror film that is either a hit or a miss for the viewer. The appeal of The Lodgers is in its own world and story. It feels like a new spin on Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. Twin siblings dealing with a family curse that will destroy them all eventually. The film does well to build up this mystery, but lacks the external conflict. I'm not trying to sway you from watching this film, but instead to give it a chance. The Lodgers is one of those kinds of films that is more of an experience than just simple entertainment. What did you think of our picks? Did any of your favorites make the list? If not, share your list of the best gothic horror films of the 2010s down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to see more of our videos. You can also join our YouTube membership and become a film student to get our videos early, and more. Thank you for watching.